Julius Wilson?
Present.
Perfect. So our next item will be approving our minutes. And I do believe Nicole did you send us some?
No minutes this time.
Okay, I didn't think so. I went through that packet and I was like, if they were at the very end, that might have been the only way I missed them. So we'll hold on we'll hold on approving our minutes until our next meeting. So we'll start off with some staff comments. I'll turn it over to
I don't have staff comments because we will discuss the plan for the 5 district community meetings and 1 at-large meeting on the agenda.
Perfect. And we will move on to item 1, community input / email recognition and discussion. And so I know I was really pleased to see how much written comment we've received since we kind of put it out there that people could email into Nicole. So we wanted to put some time on the agenda for us to discuss that. So if anyone wants to kick off that discussion, I know personally it was really great to see all of the great feedback. And, you know, I've read every single thing we've received. And, you know, generally I would say I agree with what the feedback we're receiving. And so it's something we can continue to discuss as we get ready to move forward. So I'll open it up. Does anyone have any feedback or where they want to start the discussion?
I wanted to say something. I reread through all the public comments that we had posted on the website. It looked like we had. Can you hear me?
Your feedback loop is really bad.
Okay, is it better now?
Absolutely, thank you. I don't know what you did, but thank you.
Okay. I saw there was one that was concerned about Casino Road. And there was one that was about District 4, and there was 3 that seemed frustrated with the lack of public comment or accessibility, and there was 15 comments that represent like Delta or concern about inequalities, diversity, representation, side versus historically overrepresented East Side. And it looked like those 15 comments came from 5 different neighborhoods, but not all of them listed their neighborhoods. So, but primarily a lot of them seemed like they were coming from Delta. And I do feel a little unsettled that the bulk of the opposed comments from the public were out of concern for one of our hubs for diversity in Everett and a neighborhood that's more historically disenfranchised and I guess economically depressed. I live there and I do share a lot of the same concerns. And as a community advocate, I try to listen when underserved communities speak to me. And I feel like a little bit like this commission isn't fully listening to that. More than one of the comments brought up the purpose of the districts in this process and creating like a more equitable system of voting and better representation on the city council. And I'm just wondering what level of qualitative or quantitative response that we're looking for from the community for this commission to require us to reevaluate our plan that we kind of created in a silo, or at least construct some sort of public response of why we are dismissing any of the public feedback we've received on any particular issues. Because it looked like 17 of our neighbors brought it up in writing. And I tried to think through potential options, and I mean, we could stay with our plan as long as we have a full explanation of why the alternate map was not possible despite the feedback, or we could reevaluate our plan, which there's time restraints, so that's an issue. We could provide both fleshed out plans to the community explaining why we prefer one over the other, but again, there's a time issue there too. We could do any of the above, but perhaps we could remove Delta from being combined core with Northwest and just leave Northwest as the core now that we kind of understand the permanence of that decision and that's clearer. So we don't risk disenfranchising Delta and the residents there when the districts are evaluated after the next census, in case our plan has any unintended consequences. Because as Tony said, it's assumed that districts' cores will remain intact over multiple districting cycles, which would be decades. And if that's the case, I would also propose that Casino Road core be restricted maybe just to the west side of Casino Road. I think from the comments we received that that would be self-evident as well, because it's not actually the east side of Casino Road where people had concerns. What are you guys' thoughts?
This is Chris. I would agree with renaming the core to Northwest or Delta to separate them in some way. And as far as Casino Road, I don't have a strong opinion on that, but it sounds like that's perhaps not a bad idea.
How about just calling it North Everett? Why does it have to be either or? North Everett.
Tony, I think you've heard a lot of conversation on this. Do you have a recommendation?
Yes, I wouldn't call it North Everett because that somewhat assumes that you're going to combine the two, Delta and Northwest Everett. So I would call it either Northwest Everett or Delta. I'm leaning toward favoring Delta as the name. And the reason for that is that Delta is the largest neighborhood. And so it's logical to select that as the core. And when doing so, and when you do that, I think the commissioner is right on. If for some reason in your next round of redistricting, well, Delta stays in that district, but possibly Northwest Everett doesn't. And so you have the option of, crafting another district.
So this is Ben, and I have reread it, and I've really challenged myself to figure out how I can get out of this without saying, "Yeah, Ben, you made a mistake," and that is the truth for me. I read all the comments, and I just don't see us being able to come out of this without a big slap in the face, without actually directly addressing them and not just trying to do it with a name. I think that, well, I know that they have a valid point, and I do know much of the history of how districting came into being. So I think Mary has a valid point as far as us readdressing that and seeing if there is some workable solution so that all the folks in the city would know that we did hear their comments, and it shows through our adjustment.
I have something to say. This is Ethel. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm listening to what everyone is saying, and I've read all the comments. And I have a huge problem in that when we think about what's being said here, I've got some real strong feelings deep down inside of me that are just killing me right now. As I think about everything that's happening, and I think about racism, and I think about gerrymandering, I think about that original map that was done. And that map went through certain neighborhoods, and certain people would be able to run for city council with no problem. I keep hearing these people talk about diversity, and to me, it's a hill of beans, because back in 2018, it did not mean a thing. They say one thing, but they do another. I think either your walk has got to be your walk and your talk has got to be your talk. That is not what is happening right now. I am concerned with what will happen, because I guarantee you can pick out everybody who will be running for Everett City Council when we go back and do what we're doing. Gerrymandering will stand out so strong. And, you know, Tony, you don't live here, and I understand, I know you're looking on, but living here and hearing and knowing the people involved in all of this, I certainly see gerrymandering. And especially with all the things that are happening right now in this country, I am hugely concerned.
Thank you, Ethel. Does anyone else have any comments or thoughts or questions?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Let me just chime in and say there's nothing to stop this commission from putting forth two plans. One, the Plan 8 that we have, and another plan that doesn't change or alter any of the districts except for 1 and 2. And yeah, one and 2. And obtain comments and then make a decision after those comments, after the commission has gone through all of the public forums, and then make a decision after that.
Well, let's take a minute here. I have some observations. You know, I remain focused on what Hugh Spitzer, the law professor at the University of Washington, in his memo to Jim Iles said. You know, we've got to follow the state law that follows a plan based on the most recent federal census. That was 2010. Unfortunately, we don't have 2020. And you've got to use 2010, Mr. Fairfax. You've supplemented it with information from EPRI, which is updated to 2020 in some cases. But you've got to rely on 2010 as the basis. And we all recognize, in fact, many of you have mentioned one time or another, that there's a lot of change that's gone on since 2010. We have projects on East Marine View Drive. We have projects south of Pacific and on Simpson site. There's going to be more on the riverfront. We have projects on the port. We've got projects going on possibly at Kmart, Silver Lake, all throughout the district. So the 2020 census is going to be different. And whenever that review is done, and some of you may be on that next committee, you'll have an opportunity at that time to use all the updated information. But right now, we've got to rely on some basic rules. Each district has to be nearly the same population. They've got to be reasonably compact. Mr. Fairfax even pointed that out in his recent packet when he said that they're more beneficial to others if they're geographically compact. And districts shall not be used for favoring or disfavoring racial or a minority group or political party. And Hugh Spitzer said that, you know, compact doesn't necessarily mean small, but it means that shapes of district can't be extremely irregular. And I think he said in a shape like a star or like a snake. And then of course he went on to say we've got to have public meetings, and we're going to have 6. But we've worked hard on this project, all of us. We spent a lot of times in our meetings, and we spent considerable times on our own studying. I believe all of you have spent time at home working on the material, and we've received a lot of it from Mr. Fairfax. And I think we followed the guidelines and arrived at some preliminary decisions on A8. That doesn't mean we can't modify A8 a bit, because there are some changes that probably should be looked at. But we landed on A8. And I don't intend personally to be influenced by any pressure that we may receive. I read all of the letters and emails that Nicole sends us. I look forward to the public meetings. I think we'll learn a lot, and I think we'll have everybody in the community will have an opportunity to bring forward their ideas and hear their point of view. And with respect to the comments about the second district, Mr. Fairfax, I don't think it works, and here's why. When you take Delta, Riverside, Lowell, Valley View, you go all the way south, you have a population of 14,000 or 14,500, maybe 15,000. And then you need to go into Port Gardner and Glacier and Pinehurst to pick up the rest of it. And pretty soon, if you're not careful, you're all the way out to 526. And 526, the Boeing Freeway, is just a long ways out there. And it doesn't make sense to have a district from North Everett all the way out to where Broadway intersects with Beverly, or all the way out to the Boeing Freeway. And then that changes the District 1, which then would go to South Forest Park and into possibly some of Port Gardner, and then takes all of District 2 and kind of changes the mix. And so I just don't think that it's a good use of our time to look at another plan when we know that it's fraught with some challenges. And I'm open-minded. It just doesn't work. And I would add that I supported a fellow by the name of Scott Bader, and he's a council member that is going to could very well be redistricted out. He can run in District 1, or he may not. He's an excellent council member, and I suspect he would. I'd like to be able to see him again serve, but he's going to have to run.
We're kind of getting into some muddy water here with talking about specific people and trying to make sure they're still able to run. So I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to cut you off.
I don't think that's what he was saying, Simone. I think he was saying people that he supports will not be able to run, and he's okay with that because he feels like he's doing the right thing.
And I'm saying I think we should try and steer clear in general of talking about specific people. Okay. I think it's just.
But we've been doing it with specific neighborhoods, and you've been allowing that. You haven't included every neighborhood. You've been specific about certain neighborhoods. So let's clean it up all together.
I want to say that this particular person ran against somebody from North Everett, and he was successful in his election. And so we have more population in Delta and Riverside than we do in Northwest Everett and Bayside in District 1. There's a lot of population there. And so I don't know that that shouldn't cause a good candidate to be elected out of that district. And that's all I will say. I just think we need to stay the course here and not wander too far. Thank you.
May I quickly, this is Kari. Again, live in Northwest. I'm very aware of the north end of town. I've pretty much every time I go anywhere in Everett in the last, months, but specifically now that we kind of have lines, and what sort of feels right together or not is how I'm sort of driving around the city. And this weekend, whoever, it was Jim, talked about the port development. Well, it was burned to the ground on Friday last week. And that made me, beyond just the community aspect of neighbors helping neighbors, because to me, that's kind of what all of this will eventually grow into, is that the people who are closer together within their district know what's going on in their part of town. And when I think about Northwest Delta, Bayside, Riverside, what I think about is that the tenants, the owners of the land around our entire perimeter are the Port of Everett, City of Everett, public business, private business, and other things that really apply to all of us, with Broadway being this through line of people traveling out of Everett to get to their homes in other cities. And I think that we have way more in common than we have not in common. So I also respect that there's a lot more people in Delta. And I think that in terms of numbers, truly, Northwest doesn't have all the power in the world. And I'd really love to get off of that topic for my own personal mental health, because I think that it gets conflated with involvement being a bad thing. Now, historically, yes, North End is where the city was built and grown and all of that. And it is, and we're gonna, I guess, talk about this later, or maybe the core's been moved up, but we have more in common than we have not in common. That's really my bottom line. I listen, and I am trying to pay attention to the comments. I really am listening. I come back to, we need to hear from other districts. And I rewatched the whole section from last meeting about Ben's comments, Ethel's comments, all of our comments. And I think that Ethel was right in that as soon as we get to a public meeting in another district, they're going to have, well, why are we tied up with this? Or why is this here? And I think that, again, the rationale that Tony provided to us, which now is even longer, thank you, it goes through those decision points to get us to where we are. So I would like to move forward. I'm not opposed to looking at the map again just to see how far it goes. And in the sense of just really showing the public what that looks like. Because I've heard from people in Lowell that they wouldn't mind being tied with Delta. When I went through all the data from this last week's email, my goodness, there's rich people in Lowell too. There's rich people over here. There's poor people here. There's this diversity here. There's racial here. There's language. The city is very diverse in that we include a bunch of people at all levels of income, of all levels of ethnicity and race, all of it. And I come back to, I really want a fair plan. And I continue to look at the map going, what really does benefit Everett? I heard that come up several times. And I think keeping things more compact so that way we actually relate on the same issues that affect our neighborhoods and our districts are going to be more important than whether or not a candidate can get voted or numbers and stuff. Because realistically, that's how the city moves forward, is that someone really knows where they live and they know their neighbors. And I will get out and help people vote in Delta if that's what it takes. I will get out and help people vote in Riverside. I just want people to participate in the process. That should be our end goal, not lines necessarily, but why aren't they voting, and then move them towards voting. So
Thank you.
There's my piece again. Thank you for listening.
I appreciate it. I agree with you, Carrie.
Well said.
Very well said.
Does anyone else have any more input on the feedback we've received before we move on to item 2?
To be clear, I'm not advocating for one map over the other. I'm stating that we need to have a clear response when we're going out, because there are going to be a lot of people talking about this. So whatever form that takes, and that's why I thought of a few different options, we just need to be able to have a response so that people feel that they're listened to, because this is actually quite a lot of public involvement that we're getting early on, which is not a super common thing that I've encountered on different boards and commissions and other things that I've been involved with. So with that in mind, if you guys want to stay with the plan, I'm all for it. We just need to be able to explain why either that alternate NAT is not possible, or be able to show them. And I'm sure if you show that visual, a lot of other neighborhoods will be like, yes, that is not pretty. We understand. And so that's why I gave a few different options of the way to approach this, where I feel like people could be feeling like they're being listened to. And also about adjusting those core areas. Since it's such a permanent thing, I think that's a positive step in the right direction, and that won't impact what our map is. It just impacts what we do for the next several decades. Do you guys see where I'm coming from on that? Is that clearer?
Yes.
I think I do have a comment. This is John. I think one of the things that has really helped me in communicating A8 is that single sheet that Tony put together that has the requirements, that has the guidelines. When you go through those guidelines, line by line, element by element, it becomes really clear that what we have done in A8 is to comply with those guidelines.
Thank you.
And so to me, that's the easiest part. So when somebody says, well, hey, I understand there's some issues with Delta, what's going on there? I go back to the requirements, and we satisfied this one, we satisfied this one, we satisfied this one. So we have satisfied all the requirements. And I think it's great that we're listening, and that we have people that are hopefully listening to us during these deliberations, during these discussions, because that's what's really important right now.
I think, John, that is the point that I was trying to make, was that we just, as Mary just said, we just need to make sure that we're all on that same page, and that is, if that's going to be our talking point, that's going to be our talking point, and that's fine. And that's, I'm comfortable with that if that's going to be it. but this body needs to state that emphatically.
Just one last thing. I do think that the commission potentially should have that alternative map ready to display somehow. Because I do think that a picture is worth 1,000 words. I think when people see that, they may say, ooh, I'm not sure about a configuration like that. And so I think the commission has the benefit really of seeing a whole variety of different plans, understanding different configurations. And so there may be people out there that they've never seen anything except for Plan A. And they can't understand why something can't be created. But once they understand that Northwest Everett, it has to, if you split it, it has to take population up. And that population is going to be on that western side. So pretty much all you can do is come straight down, pretty much, to Lowell and occupy that neighborhood as well. And so I think once they see that in the configuration, I think they may change their mind. And that's maybe just an ace in the hole to be able to show people.
Thank you, Tony. Can I still make a motion to adjust the Casino Road core area to specifically be West Casino Road and not East Casino Road?
I thought we had already made that adjustment, Mary. I thought, because I read the email that the person sent, and she said, hey, I see that somehow or another you stumbled into arriving at the right decision.
I thought I saw on the slideshow that it was still both East and West, but maybe I saw that incorrectly.
It does say Casino Road is the core area. What we can do is say Casino Road in Westmont. And there is a portion that's not in there. And so we have to have, I guess, a caveat.
That's still more accurate. Yeah. Okay, good. And then do we need to vote on that? Or is that a solid thing, Nicole?
Well, we also had a discussion 2 weeks ago about changing the Lowell core to Port Gardner. And if we are going to change the Northwest Everett Delta to Delta, because it has the largest population, then we should change the Lowell core group to Port Gardner.
John, I didn't hear a ton of people writing in having an issue with that. The goal of changing the core area to be one neighborhood or the other and not combined was to address a bunch of that feedback that people were complaining about. I didn't hear anyone complaining about Port Gardner or Lowell specifically and how we had selected the core areas there. It was a means to address any sort of future problems so that if it did become an issue with another commission, that they can actually have the recourse of changing that without having legal problem.
I just think we should be consistent.
I think
it has nothing to do with the letter writing. We should be consistent.
If we're going to establish a precedent or a process, we should do that across the board. I do wonder, though, if the discussion on renaming the cores can be tabled until we either get through to the end today, or I will create time on the next agenda to have a full conversation on the naming of cores.
I agree with you, Nicole. And I agree with John Monroe as well, so.
Awesome. So I guess we are about ready to move on to item 2. Tony, do you want to start your presentation?
Sure. And so let me first say that, one, you're watching the sausage making of documents. And so there will be some errors and typos and grammatical problems in what you're seeing, but the final document should be tight. But the second thing is theoretically, we have selected a plan, the proposed final draft plan 8. And so we should be not focused on the changes, unless we're going to come up with that alternative plan, but focus on how we're going to present this to the public. And so there's 3 entities, if you will, that we're going to present to the public. One is the proposed final draft plan document, and that's a report, and that includes sort of a detailed outline of, the plan development process and the plan itself and associated appendices. There's the PowerPoint presentation, and theoretically that PowerPoint presentation, or it should rather, be an extract of the document. So the document is sort of the mother document, and then you have the sub-documents coming, the presentation coming from that. And so it's just a summarization, if you will. Right now it's 39 slides. Is that too long? I'm thinking 39 slides. That's probably at least 45 minutes to an hour and something, depending upon how long each topic is. So that's a question mark I have there for you all. Is that too long? And then finally, there's the online map. And so we have the online map that individuals can go to and actually overlay layers of places of interest and other objects, layers pertaining to the city of Everett. And then the question there is, should we have a separate one only for Plan 8? Right now, it shows all of the plans, I believe, all of the plans that we've created. Should there just be one for Plan 8, A8? And so we should address those questions. I don't know if I want to stop here and we address it, or let me finish on.
I think that this ties into the conversation around my notes that I have to discuss the meeting. So maybe we merge this into what I have, and then we can just kind of make all the decisions we can today, or have the conversation today, and then we can figure out how to move forward and bring something more solidified back at our August 3rd meeting. Okay.
And so I'll stop here and not continue on with these other bullets pertain to the forms itself, questions that we should answer pertaining to that. So I'll wait and maybe interject that at that moment. And the only thing I will show you now is that there is, let's change PowerPoint. There is a new PowerPoint slide presentation that, this is an evolutionary process, sausage making. And so the purpose of the PowerPoint, once again, is to go through what the documents actually show. One of the things that I left out was you all. I threw myself in there as well. But you all, I think you should be included in there, the report as well. And so, the latest version has you all listed inside the PowerPoint presentation as well. And thank Ms. Tarver for focusing in on the electoral system. You have a system that's different than the systems I've been involved in on the East Coast and to the South, where the mayor is actually, part of city council, and that's not the case in the city of Everett. And so there's a few small minor changes, but nothing really significant insofar as the document in the PowerPoint presentation. And so we don't need to actually go over those. You will receive, I believe, a new version probably before, not probably, before the next meeting. We should be coming to a final closing out of that document. And so let me go back to this. And so, Ms. Weber, would you like me to continue or wait to go through these bullets when you get to the forum discussion?
Let's do all forum discussion at the end. I'll have you go back through these bullets, and I can kind of like interject with questions that I have like in addition to, if that's okay. Or we can do the forum conversation now if you have a plan in mind. That's okay too. I'm flexible.
No, I think that if you have something and maybe overlap, you know, we may have something redundant, so we can wait. And so the purpose of this really is now we're in the mode to actually determine how we are going to actually present the plan to the public. So we're no longer looking at configurations, except for that alternative. We may have to have maybe in the back pocket an alternative for the Delta situation, just as a show and tell. But we're now trying to make sure that the documents, both documents, include what we need for the public to understand what we did. And so if you have any comments of what should be included, definitely tell me. And you can always submit your comments to Ms. Weber and Ms. Tarver.
Tony, right. I would like to just make one suggestion here, and that is that I didn't see the presentation, or I didn't look at the presentation, so I don't know if your one-pager is included in it, but I would strongly urge us to start off by delivering that, so we start from a position of strength rather than going in and trying to defend our position.
And I think what you're referring to is the criteria.
Yes, that's correct.
This criteria is summarized.
Excellent.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Although I think we can sort of quickly go through this as a background. It does make sense to maybe, you know, introduce this as a background, but then shortly the fourth slide, I believe. Yeah, 1, 2, fourth slide is that criteria.
I think that's perfect how it is. I think people need that background just to make sure they know what we're trying to do before we explain to them why not why, but giving them more. I'd consider criteria to be more background that they need to be able to know whether what we're presenting them makes sense or not.
But oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I was going to say, and I think what we're saying, I think what you all are saying, highlight this. I can go through it definitely, but highlight it as this is what guided the plan creation.
What are you coming at?
And it did.
I think if our goal is to make sure that, this is Simone again, if our goal is to make sure that it's clear that we're meeting all these criteria, then we should echo these criteria in the presentation, which I do see we do use a lot of the same to show that this is why we did what we did. But I think what you're saying is, I think what we have right here is good, but just making sure it's included in our explanations.
Tony, this is Kari. Would it say districting criteria at the top of the slide as opposed to redistricting since we're newbies? You're muted, but yeah, I can see.
To be honest, yes, you're exactly right. And where is it now?
On that fourth one where the criteria, slide 5, districting criteria summarized.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Look, I'll change that right now. That's a good catch.
Can we just roughly, quickly roll through these slides, Tony, start to finish? So anyone who maybe forgot they had a question or hadn't gone through it has an opportunity to at least just see the length and the topics on each slide.
Definitely. So let me put it in presentation mode, show mode. So the first is basically the contents, and that's really the same contents as the report. And then we have a background, and we have that background, and once again, it's pointed out, you all have a 7-city council member. Used to have a 7-city council member at-large system, and moving to 2 elected at-large and 5 city council members elected within single-member districts. And the city is a 9-member. However, 8 members were selected by the city. 1 member was selected by you all. And then you hired me to assist. And here are the commissioner members. And then the laws that are governing are multiple, really. The Constitution, of course, and federal legislation, specifically Voting Rights Act, Washington State Constitution, and code. Both the Constitution has some aspects of redistricting, and then the code, the sort of original 29A 7601. And then the Voting Rights Act recently is the next criteria that's included. And they somewhat mimic each other. There's slight differences, but really they're very the same, really. And then, of course, you have the districting criteria that the city has for myself as well as the commission. And then here's summarized, and so this is a summarization of all of it. You know, of course, the districts have to be reasonably equal in population as possible, and the districts have to be reasonably compact, should be contiguous, coincide with recognized natural boundaries, and preserve communities of interest. I'll talk a little more about that a little later. You can't have the data used for a purpose of favoring or disfavoring racial or political groups. You know, boundaries should be drawn to maintain, shall not rather be drawn to maintain in a manner that perpetuates dilution of votes and members of a protected class or classes. And then the boundaries should follow voting precincts. The activities, and this, I won't go through each one of these, but the activities, I think you all know, that first meeting, there was a training session, if you will, and then we had socioeconomic maps, and then we developed some preliminary plans, and you all submitted your comments, and then we moved down, remember, from the general to more detailed, so then precinct maps were developed. So you could see the attributes at the precinct level, develop some additional maps, came up with a plan A7. I didn't have that in the last draft. We did have an A7. You quickly added some comments to A7, and I incorporated that to A8. And let's see, plan. That's an interesting thing. I see something right there. The plan development. And so this right here goes into the more of the detailed of the criteria. And so this explain or will explain to the public what's meant by equal population. Essentially, we calculate an ideal population size, and for the city of Everett, that's 20,604. And we need to meet that population size, which would then what's called a deviation. And it's an overall deviation, 10% have been accepted by the courts. That's 2,060, so we can't have any more than 2,060 from the lowest populated district to the highest populated district, but we have another criteria of 5%. And so we have a criteria for plus or minus 5%. Then that means our districts need to fall between 19,574 and 21,634, and they all do. And of course, they need to be contiguous. The exception is that Lake Champlain to the east. And and we have to attach that to a district. That's one thing that's left out hanging for us. Ultimately, that'll become part of district whatever, maybe District 5 or District 2. We should have compact districts. We use 3 compactness measures: Rioch, Polsby, Popper, and Convex Hall. They were all found to be compact, reasonably compact. And as I mentioned as a footnote, I compared the districts to the state legislative districts. They fell within that range of the compactness for that, although it's not a pure apples to apples comparison. And then minimize political subdivisions, which is one of the traditional redistricting criteria, and that was not splitting precincts, and in our case, VTDs, were left intact. There was a prioritization of preserving neighborhood communities of interest. The citywide survey that was taken, 75% people said existing neighborhoods should be the primary community of interest to preserve. And so it was a clear-cut choice. That was sort of a primary community of interest that we selected. And then some precincts split neighborhoods, so therefore it's obvious we cannot completely keep neighborhoods whole. We inevitably have to split some neighborhoods because the precincts actually split neighborhoods. And if we're not splitting precincts, then we're going to split some neighborhoods. But that was minimized. And then preserving other communities of interest, we look at that. And in that same survey, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th ranked communities of interest was language, income, and housing types. And we looked at those inside that attribute, socioeconomic attributes, and tended to look at that to make sure that they, when we expanded with like communities of interest. It's a selection of district cores. That was one of the first things we did. Maintaining district cores is a traditional redistricting criteria, and that's the reason why we select that first. We didn't have any cores, and so these cores will now exist. Theoretically, they will exist as the district cores. Doesn't mean you must, but that's tradition for the traditional redistricting criteria. And then we deliberated and we select the 5 core areas, Delta, and this is where we need to make a decision, and I think we should make a decision tonight. Delta and Northwest Everett, whether that's a core, Lowell, Boulevard, Boulevard Bluff, Harbor View, Seahurst, Glen Haven, and View Ridge, Madison neighborhoods. And then Casino Roads within Westmont, except for that small edge at the west end. Maybe I need to insert that in. And then Silver Lake. And so here are the neighborhoods as we know. The development process, we first, after we selected those core areas right here, some preliminary plans were generated, and then you provided comments on those plans. They were Plan A1 to A3 and then B1. And from those comments, it developed a new set of alternative plans, A4 to A6, and then a B2. The difference between the letters, as you all remember, is the A's and the B's, was a different concept that you actually had sort of construct for plans. The B's had sort of a west coastal district on the end, and we decided against that. A new set of comments were provided, and we created an A7. And then one more set of comments on A7 created Plan A8, which is the proposed final draft plan, which is this. And so here are some of the statistics in the following slides. These are total population using 2010 census, which we are directed to use the last decennial census, or what's called 100% count data. We can't use sample data to equalize the population. That's the reason why we use the 2010 census to determine the equal population. So we can see that we have our district range here is 8.27%. That's included in the report, not in here. They want to squeeze it somewhere in there, but that's our overall deviation. The highest deviated district is 4.20, but within that plus or minus 5% deviation, acceptable deviation. I'll get to that a little later. Yeah. We also have American Community Survey. You use this just to get an idea, a better idea of the makeup of the district. So as the 2010 population is used for that population deviation, you can use other data sets, valid data sets, to describe the district itself. And this is the American Community Survey. Gives us a little more recent, although it's not 2020, more like mid-decade rather, data using a 5-year ACS data. And it provides us the citizen voting age population. This is the population of those that have the potential, they're not necessarily all registered, but have potential of voting. And so we can see the highest minority percentage for the 2 districts, 33%, 30% for districts 4 and 5. If we look at the ESRI's enrichment estimate for 2020, this should be the population. 56% for District 4 is the largest minority population percentage. District 2, 29% is the lowest, but the minority population is scattered or dispersed throughout each district inside Everett. It's probably one of the most diverse cities that I've seen and come across. Registered voters, this just gives you an idea of the registered voters and turnout for each of the districts using the 2018 and 2019 elections. Compactness, which is how just dispersed or how irregularly shaped the district is. As I mentioned before, these are compact notice. The little note down there, although not exact comparison, all the compactness measurements lie between the minimum and maximum compactness measurements for all Washington state legislative districts. So I took a look at that just to make sure that nothing is out of shape. You have District 5 being the lowest compactness measurement, usually the lowest compactness scores, and that's due to the irregular shape of the jurisdiction down there. No nefarious things going on. Here are our neighborhood splits. And once again, we are forced or compelled to split some neighborhoods because of the precincts overlapping and splitting neighborhoods. District 3 is the one that split only one. It's that small corner of South Forest Park. If we're looking at socioeconomic attributes, this gives us sort of a overall
Hey,
snapshot.
Tony, we only have about 3 more minutes to buzz through this to get on the other topic. I'm sorry. So we just need to Bruce, I think just go through the headings on each slide and then we'll roll through. Yeah. Excellent.
And so, I'll just provide a broad description. And so what we have now are the detailed descriptions of each district. So there's a map associated with each of the districts. District 1, there's a zoom down on this new version. I tried to put some focus so individuals can actually see certain areas, like this area, 0 population, that actually has 7 people there. Sort of the overall description of District 1. Once again, I want to make sure this reflects what's in the document. So, this will be massaged probably to reflect whatever's going to end up in the document as a summary. And then the rationale for district configuration. This tells us how we got there. How did we get to this District 1 configuration? And so District 2 has the same thing. District 2 has a little circle just to bring people in on that split Bayside area right there where that staircase precinct 18 is. This shows us where that South Forest Park is, that is included in District 3, and that's that split area. Then District 3, nothing really significant. District 4, zoom down on two things. I probably should put a red circle there for that district, that small census block right there that's not included. Probably not here, but this focuses in on where Cascade and Twin Creeks are split. And District 5, just where it's split up at the northern end. And that is the presentation.
Thank you, Tony.
No problem.
Does anyone have any comments before we move on to item 3? Alrighty, we'll move on to item 3, map adjustment and comments. So we can take a look at A8.
Tony, on District 3, you had a map on page 22 that showed the boundary at 52nd. I really not sure where that boundary should be. I know that you have tried to work with that irregular area at the bottom of South Forest Park and put some of that in District 4. I looked at that map. I'm not sure whether it should be at 52nd or whether it should be at 57th. You have them both on the map. You show them, and I just have to defer to you with the statistics. It's a statistical question. I don't have the data behind it.
Right. Now, I think if you're referring to the location of the district lines, since we're using precincts, we're compelled to, and I'm trying to bring that document up, but since we're using precincts, we're compelled to follow the precinct boundaries. And so here we go. And so you're talking about District 3?
It's page 22, figure 5.3.
Yes, right there. Right. Let's zoom down on that South Forest Park. And here's the problem or the issue. This is an entire precinct. You can't see all of it, but this is an entire precinct that goes there. So we have two choices. We either split.
You're seeing the black screen.
Oh, you're not seeing the, okay, hold on a second. Let me see. Do you see it now?
No.
No, it's still a black screen.
Interesting. Interesting, very interesting. Let me see.
We don't need to get distracted on this. Just
right, but
take a look at it, and if that's the question, if it's a precinct issue, then I understand.
Right. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll go back to this one because it shows you the same thing. That area right here, that's a precinct that is whole. And let me see if I can show it to you here. This precinct goes all the way up here, right there. And so we really, it splits and it overlaps South Forest Park and View Ridge, I think Madison, is that it?
That answers the question.
Right there. So that precinct actually splits and overlaps South Forest Park in here. So we have a choice of either splitting View Ridge Madison and placing that in District 3, or splitting South Forest Park just right here.
You answered the question, Tony.
Okay.
We can move
All right.
on.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, Tony, this is John. Could we take one look? Well, my clock's going to dong. Hopefully it doesn't bother people. Could we take one more look at District 5? So if you look at District 5 is plus 4.20 deviation. That's the highest deviation that we have. And District 4, right next to it, is minus 2.42. I looked at, I think it's precinct 40 with 481 people that we currently have in District 5, and that's in Cascade View. If we could move that precinct from District 5 to District 4, that would bring that plus 4.2 down, and then would increase the minus 2.42. Can you see that on your?
Yes, this one. And I think we had a plan that was configured that way. And
it didn't work.
And right. And one of this precinct, I think, what I looked at matched, socioeconomically better with District 5. And so it becomes basically a judgment call of whether you would go with trying to minimize the population deviation, or you're trying to actually make sure you match the precincts in the right, or a right match for the districts. And I selected matching the precinct.
I would defer to, I'd like to ask Ethel a question, because I'm looking at a school boundary for the Everett School District in Mukilteo, and what I'm looking at when I have it in front of me, it shows that Dorn Avenue all the way down to 7th Avenue, it appears all of that is in Mukilteo School District. And should that be a factor? It's just a question. It appears that it could be. Ethel, is that correct? Is that in the Mukilteo School District?
Some of the people there do end up in the Mukilteo School District, and a lot of them end up in the Everett School District. We did the boundary lines last year, and so a lot of things changed there. So I would like to go back. I can get that information for you tomorrow from the Everett School District to make sure. But I do know that some of those kids come down and catch the bus on 7th Avenue, and they are taken to most of them walk, up to Emerson, and some of them come down and they're taken over to Jefferson. So let me take a look at that. Let me get that paperwork from the Everett School District tomorrow, and I can get it to you, Jim.
Get it to Tony. And Tony,
okay, I'll give it to Nicole.
Would that make a difference?
Well, I took a look at the school district lines. I downloaded what the city had on its website, school district lines, and I could not see a clear pattern of using school districts throughout. And I think what you point out may be one area where the district line may come through here, let's just say. But it then goes all the way and splits Evergreen and splits the other neighborhoods up to the western area. So there's no real rhyme or reason to use school districts in this districting scheme. If the school districts follow neighborhood lines, then I would say, okay, let's look at school districts and follow the neighborhood lines. but the boundaries that I looked at, they slice right through. And so it did not make sense to me to include those.
Well, John made a good point in terms of deviation percentages, and when I looked at that just now on the map in front of me, I could understand what he's saying. That's a good point. That would be something that could be considered.
There is something also. Now, this is not a priority, but when I looked at the 2020 population, this is, again, I said, let's draw the district the way they are, the way the district should be right now, not thinking about 2020. But when I drew the districts, there were 2 districts that would exceed the population deviation, and they were 3 and 5. So in 2020, theoretically, if Esri's correct, 3 and 5 would be the 2 districts that would exceed population. And if that's the case, then configurations to 3 and 5 potentially, maybe 2 could be made to actually adjust those. If we try to equalize the population here, I think it will change that from those 2 districts being out of kilter. There's a simple fix with 3 and 5. If you really are thinking about it, we could actually move South Forest Park back to 3 because the population goes down, and pretty much that's it. And so if we're thinking about the future for 2020, that's another reason why not to mix with this configuration, because of the population changes from 2010 to 2020. Any other questions?
All of these districts are going to change with the new census and all of the developments that are occurring. District 3 is going to end up with, I believe, the Kmart property, and there's other growth, and as well as all of the districts are going to just, there's just a lot going on. So
I think when you're saying that, Jim, we also have to account for that there is an increased population where you're saying the districts are shifting, but the numbers of people that live within the city of Everett will change. And so those numbers may not be as skewed as you think because the populations are larger. So the districts consequently will actually be larger in population.
It's a good point. Some of you will be on that committee, I hope, and we'll have to wrestle with all this when that occurs again. That's a good point. I get it.
So then are we ready?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Simone. So are we ready to shift the conversation then to discuss what our 5 community meetings and, well, our 6 community meetings will look like? 5, 1 in each proposed district, and then of course 1 at large. And I also just want to quickly go over the calendar with all of you to make sure that we have all the dates through November ready to go, as this project is actually, we're on the tail end of it. So, yes. So I just wanted to run over a couple things, and Tony has some really great questions that he's going to be asking all of you. And within that, I just want you to remember that we're going to have, like I said, 6 meetings, 1 in each proposed district, 1 at large. We will have to publish these meetings within 10 days. So it's going to have to go in the Herald, on our website, etc. Within 10 days, I have to have this stuff published. So if we spread these meetings out, that's more publishing that we have to do, and that will be a part of our budget. But I just want you to know that it's not a problem. I just want you to be aware. We are required to listen to public comment. We are not required to respond. I would like you guys to consider what platform we should use. So my idea is we kind of have a hybrid platform. The Open Public Meetings Act is suspended currently, where we don't have to provide a space for the community to come and watch and listen. But I'm going to operate under the assumption, as I said in my email, that the governor will release that, and we will have to provide a space for people to come and at least watch it on a TV and provide comment. So, and that will have to be in each district. But my plan is to have a very robust online platform that we use, and then also have this physical location, so that we're prepared for whatever comes our way, and we don't have to scramble at the last minute. We need to think about time limits for people providing comment. We need to think about, did I say the Teams or Zoom platform? So we can use either one of those. Zoom comes with a cost, but it's not a very large cost. So we can do that if you did think that that's more accessible. We need to think about interpretation, like how do we get interpreters and how are we going to use that on this online platform? That's something that Flora and I have been wrestling around with for a week, and I honestly don't have a great solution for that. So, Kari has one, good. And then we have to provide like I said, a physical location. So we'll have to have internet access there. So my grandiose idea of having this on like a football field where people can socially distance, come to find out that doesn't work at all. That was a terrible idea. So, and then we need to think about who is going to be attending each of these meetings. So is it the full commission at each meeting? Is it half and half? Do we split you up? That's not dictated to us. And then I also want you to keep in mind that after the 6 meetings, if any modifications are made, we have to accept written public comment at minimum on the maps again. So after we do this process, if you do decide to make any changes or updates, then we need to create a space for people to, at minimum, provide written comment again. So I just kind of wanted to cover those bullet points, put in your brain some of the things that we've been thinking about as we answer these questions that Tony has for us. So I think if it's okay, Tony, Simone, I'll just lead through these because I really need to understand what you guys want to do in order to do the work on the back end of this. Of course, with Tony's support, Flora's support, and then Pipa, who is the person who produces these wonderful online meetings for us. She's going to be potentially providing input as needed as well. So, do we want to provide a detailed outline of the plan, development process, and plan? I guess we'll just start right there. From your guys' conversation, it sounds like you do want to provide a detailed outline of your process. So I think Tony covered that. I think 39 slides is far too long, especially if we're going to have hypothetically 80 people on hold to provide public comment. You're looking at like a 4-hour meeting because I have to bring people in through the online platform. They need to introduce themselves. We need to be able to call people out by phone number, or however we do that. It's going to be very time consuming. So I think we need to figure out how to encourage people to find information online to be prepared to provide comment, and then reduce our presentation that we do. What are your thoughts on that?
And this is Flora Diaz from Legal. And one thing that we did when we were getting public comment a few years ago before the charter amendment was Hugh Spitzer made a video, and people were able to view the video ahead of time if they wanted. So one option might be to use the 39 slides and make a longer video and post that online so that people could view that, but not necessarily include the full, most detailed part as part of all of the 6 public meetings. We could create extra materials and post them online.
And Pipa just wrote that same thing. And then we could also take that video and have it translated. And that would be one thing that we could do in advance specifically, you know, at least if nothing more than into Spanish. So that would be easier to pay to have that done too.
This is Kari. I'll just jump in to say that because we've used Zoom and we had someone request a closed captioning on one of our webinars that we did at my job, and it was easy to hire a company, and the person showed up as a guest and was able to type in what we were saying. If the video is done in advance, that makes it very easy to have the closed captioning done and have that a part of that video, and like you just said, translated into other languages. So I think that's great. But you can also get a sign interpreter at the time of a presentation quite easily too through the company that we had hired. And it was actually something for the city of Everett in partnership. So I could provide that information as we get closer.
And PIPA is just saying that we have the ability to do closed captioning. We have a contract. So that's something that we will absolutely incorporate. So the thought of, so we'll get Tony a time to do the presentation for this group. You guys can approve it, and then we will get him recorded, filmed doing that, and then we'll get that translated and get that up as you know, as soon as we're ready. The sooner the better. So, interactive online map, Tony, that's already on our website, the interactive map. Do we want to draw attention to that? Or I'm not sure what the bullet here is kind of saying.
I think that's right. One is there are three components. There's the document, the PowerPoint presentation, and the interactive online map. The question is, should it just be Plan 8, A8, that is focused on, or should we have all of the plans on there?
This is Kari again. I posted the link in the chat because I think it's very valuable, whether or not it's good to have all those plans in there. If they're available as PDFs, people can kind of get the gist, because you can click around the precincts around those lines. It may be more confusing if we provided all of the plans. However, if there's good instruction, then it might be nice for people to click around, and the data-driven folks will be so happy to have all of that. So I would take other opinions on that, but it's interesting to me. I think it's a cool tool.
Great. So I think we can kind of work out. Oh, sorry, did someone have a comment?
Yes, I have a question. This is Julius. I think that would be a good idea to add the plans, but are we gonna, if we do that, would we add like the, you know, how we're able to see the, how much money people are making, things like that? I don't think that should be public access, not right now, maybe not ever. So I don't think we should add that into the plan. If we should add, like, if we should put all the information that we see out, I don't think we should put that out.
Like people's personal information?
Yeah, like the stuff that we can see, like how we know, like this many people earn this much money here, this many people earn this much money here. Is that public? Is that already public information? Is that
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
But I think that's a great point. And definitely something to think about is, you know, what people are learning about their neighborhoods and their city, how that might impact people. Thank you for that. And then, so the PowerPoint presentation presented by Tony, I think that's correct. And then the interactive website, that's where you move around the precincts and stuff. People suggested if we do that, that we have a video that it shows or explains how people can use that, a tutorial video. So that would be, Tony, that would be a something for you to do as well if we decide to have that option in there.
Correct.
Should we go to the next slide? So that is a great, the first one, will forums have question, comments, or both? That is like a really important question that I really need to understand what the expectation is from you all, because we need to figure out our time restraints. So really, the staff that we have is like Flora, Pipa, and myself. And then we have the communications team that will, you know, put it on Facebook and everything, do all the marketing for us. But we need to figure out how much time each meeting is going to take, because we need to staff those meetings, and we need to figure out what time they're going to start. You know, if they're going to be 5 hours long, then we need to start at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If they're going to be 2 hours long, we could do, you know, 6 o'clock in the evening or whatever. So we really need to figure out, are you going to be answering questions? Are you going to be providing comments, or are you just going to be listening?
This is Simone. I'm inclined to say that we don't accept questions at the public forums, but that people can send in questions ahead of the forums, and we can kind of go through those and kind of look at some trends and answer if there's a lot of people asking the same things. And then I'd say comments should probably be less than 2 minutes, just so that if we do have a lot of people there, we can get through those, but allowing people to still write in. So if someone has longer comments, they're more than welcome to write them in, and we'll review them. But just for the sake of us being able to present this and do 5 of these meetings and keep things kind of rolling a little bit, I'd say those would be my top 2 recommendations on those first couple questions.
So I'd like to chime in. I agree with what you just said, Simone, but I also think that we should have an area or a space where they can make comments before the meeting, and then make or questions before the meeting, and then comments after the meeting, but they all be written form. That way, you know if the presentation was effective enough to see, because they are already coming in with a set opinion. If the public forum changed that opinion, then we'd have those comments afterwards. If it didn't change those opinions, then we'd have to address it as such. But you have at least a starting point. I'm not trying to shift the comments one way or the other. I'm just saying, let's have a before and an after to see if it made a difference.
We could structure it as well, Ben, that the questions we get on the presentation, we hold, and then when we do the at-large meeting, we address, you know, we schedule in an additional 40 minutes and we answer all of those questions from those 5. I mean, I'm assuming we're not going to get 300, but you never know, I guess. So I wonder how you want to address answering those questions that we're going to get.
And this is Flora from legal. I would rather we try to structure the at-large meeting similar to all the other meetings, just so that the citywide meeting is sort of the same type of opportunity for the public.
It would be the same. It would just include an additional 40 minutes where we could answer or ask those questions, unless we want to have a 7th meeting, in which case we could do that.
That was my suggestion, is we could have a 7th meeting, and then it's not part of the minimum restrictions. It wouldn't necessarily be one of the districting public forum meetings, but just a Q&A meeting. And it could be even entirely online, or people could submit written comments ahead of time without having to worry about a physical space as well, unless we want to accommodate a physical space. But with the pandemic, might be better to avoid that. But if you want to have extra meetings beyond the 6 minimum, it could be just question and answer for that.
This is Simone again. I think that maybe having that kind of question and answer meeting, it'd be useful maybe after those first 5 and before the final meeting, to kind of answer questions before we do that last meeting. I think that's what makes most sense to me. What does everyone think?
I like that. I was just hoping that we would all do just written comments. I mean, written questions. That way, if you had the questions beforehand, you could answer them, and then have the comments afterwards. Not public comments, not where people were getting up and speaking, because that's where all the time comes in. You get people that are very long-winded like myself, and they just talk and say the same thing over and over about 6 times, and about the 7th time somebody cuts them off, and then we're off in a different tangent. And that's why I was just hoping that all comments and questions would be in a written format rather than in a verbal format.
So I guess that's a question for probably Nicole and Flora. So if ahead of, let's say, our first meeting in District 1, ahead of that meeting, we have an opportunity for people to give any questions or written comments. Is there any reason why we wouldn't be able to, if people are giving us questions leading up to that meeting, that we have that we respond to some of those questions at that specific meeting, but we might not necessarily, like, it might inform how we do our presentation moving forward for those other 5. We wouldn't necessarily go through all of those same questions every time, or should we stick to making those 5 meetings as similar as possible and not really doing different things for each one?
It is up to you guys and what you feel is going to be the best use of time and resources. I mean, Flora and I have different recommendations, but at the end of the day, it is up to you. So, you know, you could even form, you know, 3 people could get together and figure out, you know, and I could work with you and we could create a full recommendation with input from a few of you and then bring it back to the larger group on how to, you know, do that part of it. That might be good. And then we could just have an additional meeting next week so that I could get this kind of done and start pulling in IT where I need to, get people ready to go, get advice from Flora, and work on finding venues, which I will need help from you guys as well.
And I'll email you, because I was kind of poking around on the map today at through like the different general areas of Everett, just to see what places could even accommodate a meeting like this, especially since we have no idea how many people might come. And like you mentioned, big open fields are out unless we can get a screen and get Wi-Fi there. So I made a little list, but I'll email it.
Thank you so much, Simone. Yeah. I really appreciate that. So is that good? Who would like to work on this subcommittee?
I would like to say something before we get there. I think that this commission should really err on the side of more public involvement than less, because of the pandemic. And I think, I'm not sure that expecting 300 people to attend is likely. As much as we may find this really like fascinating and exciting, I think I just don't think that is going to be necessarily a huge issue for us, especially with so many meetings that we're doing in so many different areas. But since we have not been very receptive and open from the get-go about having public comment and involvement, back and forth, answering questions, all of that, I think we should really make a serious effort to err on the side of having that face-to-face, back and forth. I remember when they were talking about housing and they would come out to like neighborhood meetings and they would answer questions. And when Wendy McClure would be doing everything for her community outreach, it would be a back and forth and it would be a dialogue. It wouldn't be just write in your questions and then we'll answer them. I understand having a timed response, much like City Council does, and so it, you know, keeps people being concise, but I do think we need to have that back and forth dialogue, and we do need to do more rather than less or just the bare minimum.
Another opportunity for this group, as well as Akari has requested staff come to the Council of Neighborhoods meeting on the 27th to give an update. Earlier, we were going to get feedback from them, but that ship sailed because of COVID. So if any community group is listening right now and would like Simone or Chris or myself or any of you to come and provide an update at their meeting, that is not unreasonable. It's not out of our scope. It's completely fine, and we can do that and come provide an update, and that's something we can do and we're happy to do. So anyone listening at home, Weber@everettwa.gov, and you know, we can do that too, as an addition to all the other things we're going to do, but that could be a small piece to help.
I just wanted, this is Kari, to echo on what Mary said, I do think that it would be great to allow for the dialogue within these meetings. I can see the next set of questions, or if questions are asked, then who's answering. And I think that early on, as we were learning this process, we were more leaning on Tony for those answers. But as time has gone on, I think that any of us on the commission can respond to questions about how we got to places. So I think it would, again, I don't know how many people will show up. My fear is that if we end up having these and it's the same people who are constantly already paying attention, that defeats the purpose. I would like to see and make sure that the public is truly showing up. And if they do not understand what it is we've done, that they have that opportunity to have the dialogue and ask Tony or ask one of us what it is and how we got there, or what does that mean? Because those little precinct lines are really weird. Or what about the school districts? What about this? So to assume that people understand where we are as we show up to these forums, I think is wrong. I think we need to really educate them as to the whole process of how we got here and allow them that time to sort of think about it. So maybe the comments at the beginning, and then we have questions at the end for that clarification sort of thing of, I heard you say this. Is that what you really meant? Okay. And now what do I do to follow up with you? Okay, well, then you can write us comments and then we can process those in one of our regular meetings. I like the idea of a 7th meeting that came up with Flora to have a purely Q&A one. So you have the forum that is an educational piece, and then you have another opportunity that people can really ask us these questions, because frankly, this is something we will all have to live with. They will have to live with when we're done. So we may as well go through that tough. I don't think it's going to be that tough, but the dialogue with them in that room, and maybe it isn't one of these 6, it is a 7th opportunity. I think more the better. My schedule's open. There's nothing else going on, right?
I have something here. When we begin these neighborhood meetings, I think it's important that the people that live in those neighborhoods of where the districts are going to be, they are given first priority to be there. I think it's unfair that if people go from one area to the next area to put their 2 cents in, I think the people who live in those areas have first choice in coming into those meetings if we're going to an outside venue to bring them in, or even if we're doing it by phone. I think that's very important, that we don't have a dominating group of people at the meeting. It's the same people asking the same questions and saying the same things. I think it's important that we encourage all of the people in Everett to come out, voice your opinion, because I believe my feel is you have no right to complain unless you're willing to be a part of the solution. So if you have a problem, come out and represent yourself in your neighborhood.
Laura, is there any advice that you have for us on what Ethel just said? Can we look at, what that might look like?
I think that Ramsey Rammerman from our office, who is more of an expert on OPMA, is going to be coming at our next meeting. So some of these technical questions might be better for Ramsey.
Just as a quick response, this Kari, Ethel, is that when I attended a Everett School District meeting, I had to live within the district. So I had to provide my address on a form, a written form. And again, Ramsey may explain all this, but that may allow it so we can check addresses within the proposed district.
The school district is definitely set up that way. And they're really good about it. And so when we did the new boundary changes, hey, I really love the way they handle things there.
So how would we like to, I think the documenting of suggestions, the figuring out how to make these now 7 meetings work, and the deliberation for after and responding to comments is something that a subcommittee and I could put together and then bring back to the larger group on the 3rd. And if you guys are okay with that, I'd just love a couple volunteers and we could just meet like early next week. Ben immediately turned his camera off. Ben, does that mean you're not interested? Just kidding.
That was close, but no, I am interested in how it's done. I really, the public meetings, I really think that we need I wanted to have more public input prior to this, but we waited, and now we're going to have to just allow folks to do what they do. I don't want it to be a more selective process where if a person feels like they could come to all 7 meetings, if I'm going to come to all 7 meetings, I certainly wouldn't mind seeing a couple of faces there that I know, so that I kind of know where their position is. But I'm not as hung up on the public meetings as one would think. I think that we've made some good decisions, and I'm willing to stand by them. That's my position there. And I think because of the great decisions that we've made and the choices that we made, I'm willing to go and just stand up and say, hey, yes, this is what we did. This is how we did it. And all of our questions should be along those lines. People are always going to have a stump the moderator or whatever but I'm feeling really good about this process.
I would like to see all the commissioners attend all of the meetings.
I agree with both Ben and Ethel. I think we should all attend the meetings, and I think we should not be restrictive on whoever's attending the meetings. I think we're thinking this is going to be a bigger issue than it is.
Well, I think we should prepare to have at minimum 30 people at each meeting, which is if everything went perfect and nobody spoke except for those comments, that's 90 minutes. So we're looking at minimum a 2-hour meeting, and then also the complication of helping people get connected via phone line, all that kind of stuff. So we're looking at, in my mind, a 2.5-hour meeting for each of those. So, and hopefully we don't use all that time, because I know you guys have given a lot of time, but actually sounds like hopefully we do. Hopefully we get 30 people at each meeting, and 2.5 hours is the right amount of time, and we can hear from those people. So then can the people kind of plugged in, like Simone, do you or Chris want to sit on my subcommittee?
I will.
Sure.
So chair and vice chair, and then we should probably just have 3. So Mary or Kari or Ethel, you guys have been very engaged.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to.
Okay. So
I'll help you out. I'll help out if you need it. Yes. This is Ethel.
Great. So Simone, Chris, Mary, and Ethel, I'll invite you guys to, we'll find a meeting time next week, hammer this out, come up with a proposal, and then bring it back on the 3rd. And Ramsey will be there to answer all of our specific questions, which will be very helpful, because then we can really have this plan done. So my next kind of thing I just wanted to go through with everyone is our meeting schedule. So just for these regular district meetings, we have one on August 3rd, one on August 31st, one on October 5th, and I would like to propose to add a meeting on the 19th, because we need to be finished with this plan to propose to City Council. You know, it will have to go to City Council by November 4th. And so I'd just like to add an additional meeting on the October 19th if there are no, if there's no objections. And this does not include our 7 public meetings that we'll have. And our subcommittee will decide if weekends are best, weekdays are best, or a mix of that. And then Tony, I'll, once we have that solidified, I'll email you, and you and I can work out dates so that on the 3rd we have a full proposal with dates and everything else.
And we have nothing in September? Did I
yeah,
miss the
September our meeting is early, so it's on the 31st. We could add one on the 14th if that would be a good idea, just to hold, and if we don't need it, great. But that might also be a good idea. September 14th and October 19th as additional meetings?
I think to hold those spaces
I'm kind of confused here because I heard August 3rd, August 31st, October 5th, and October 19th. I didn't hear anything for September. Now you're saying September 14th.
I'm saying we can add a meeting on September 14th as well, if you feel that would be helpful. Tony, can you unshare your screen as well? We currently do not have a meeting scheduled in September because we moved it earlier, but I'm thinking maybe we might need one.
So if we had a meeting in September 14th, would that preclude the 19th? Shouldn't we be able to finish what we're going to take or send to the council on the 5th? Then, if we're having that additional meeting there on the 14th.
In theory,
I'm asking a question. I'm not stating.
Yeah, I think in theory we would be able to do that. But if we make any changes after the community meetings, we're going to have to accept public comment again, have a discussion, and then, you know, vote to keep or change or make changes or whatever. So if we don't schedule those 2 additional meetings, it doesn't allow a lot of space for not scheduling a last minute meeting if we make changes.
Well, were you saying that all of our public comment meetings or public meetings would be in September?
No.
That's okay.
We haven't picked dates for those public meetings yet. So they'll be, in my mind, end of August and through through the beginning of September, or beginning to mid-September. I'd like to be finished with all of the meetings in my mind by September 21st, but that is not a hard deadline. That's like my own deadline, and then that gives us a lot of time for deliberation. But if we're not done by then, you know, honestly, our hard deadline is going to be like October 12th if you don't make any changes. October 12th needs to be final. Yeah.
And that's because we do have to, if you do make changes after the public comment, there is a notice requirement and publishing requirement for receiving additional written public comment. So that's part of the timeline there.
Yeah, and that would include it. So. And
that's why I'm hoping that we are finished with public comment by the middle of September, before the middle of September, and have that meeting on September 14th to figure out if we need to make some changes because of the public comment, and then have October 5th also as the second date. I'm trying to cut out meetings, really, truthfully, because I only, you know, as a retired person, I only have 6 meetings a day. So I just need to cut out as many as I possibly can. I kept saying that I was retired. I'm not retired anymore, folks. I still have 6 meetings a day.
So maybe instead of the 14th, we have it September 21st, and then that gives us an additional week in September to get through those 7 meetings. So can we all agree to add a meeting on September 21st and a tentative meeting on October 19th?
We can do that, Nicole. This is Chris. I think after the subcommittee meets to determine a schedule for the public meetings, that might kind of drive when we want to meet again a little bit too. So we could stub those in, I suppose, but I suspect they might change.
That is a great point. You make a very valid point. Okay. So I'm going to put those on my calendar as tentative, and then we'll solidify that on the 3rd.
This is John. So when you come back to us on the 3rd, you will also have the tentative dates for the 7 community meetings and the locations for those meetings?
I probably won't have the locations, but we will have tentative dates and tentative locations. I'm gonna we'll try to confirm them. We'll do what we can, but I won't promise that.
Maybe we could have everyone submit any times that they definitely cannot be available so that subcommittee could be aware of those.
Do we want any people to also submit maybe location suggestions with that? Just in case people in their own neighborhoods know of a good place.
Mm-hmm.
Just suggestions, make it easier.
I think so. This is Karia, just on a logistics question. Again, the deadline is November to City Council, but have we been added to an agenda? Do we know which date the City Council would be meeting where we're presenting this plan?
They have to adopt it on the 4th with no changes.
November 4th?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we could go earlier than that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but
yeah, we could go in front of council earlier than that if you're done earlier than that.
Gotcha. I just wanted to, when is the plane taking off? It's the backing up of time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
November 4th, we have to be completed and it needs to be adopted. And another idea that PIPA, in all of her wisdom, just threw out is either creating or partnering with a local radio station, and then people could call in with their questions and we could answer them that way. So that's something our subcommittee can think about as well. Thank you, PIPA. Got some smart people on our team. And I'll also, if you guys didn't see, I'll be adding the notes to our chat bar to the notes, just so nothing is missed. There were some suggestions and comments in there. So that's all I have. Simone, if you're good, Tony, you're good, then I think you guys can adjourn.
Awesome. All right. Well, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Mary, you're muted.
I'm muted?
Aye.
Oh, Mary.
Mary.
Are we going to discuss any of the core stuff, or are we saving that till the next meeting?
We're out of time today. I think we should put it on. I'll put 30 minutes on the agenda for next week so that we can have a thorough discussion and people can think about it in advance.
Awesome.
Still unmuted. Am I unmuted, Nicole?
Yeah, we can hear you, Jim.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that if the committee that's working with Nicole, if they can, I think I agree with Ben and his suggestion in terms of what you might want to consider in terms of dates and the meetings. And secondly, I just want to comment that the Precinct 40 matter that John brought up, I think is a good one for us to consider. And Simone, I understand and agree with your pause when I mentioned a current council member. I do. I just wanted to make it clear that today we have an excellent council member from the Delta Riverside East Everett area. He's highly regarded. That's a point I wanted to make. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Alrighty, any other comments before I adjourn this meeting? Okay.
Julius.
Oh, good, Julius.
Could you put time to the side so we can talk about Lake Chaplin also? Is that how you pronounce it? I don't want us to forget about what we're going to do with that. Not possible.
Lake Chaplin?
Yeah, and Tony's plan development slide, he had a question for us, and I don't want us to forget about that. I want us to add that or whatever, so we can add it to the map and just get it. So we don't forget it. Looking back, he brings it up, and it's kind of too late now. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah. Thank you, Julia.
Radar.
Yeah, please.
Thank you.
I don't know how much time that's going to take to talk about it, think about it. You're welcome.
Alrighty, if there's no other comments, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Opposed? Alrighty, have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.